Sam, thanks for being on the program. I've been excited about chatting with you because every time we get together, we find stuff to talk about. In fact, I normally prepare extensively for my interviews, but for you, I just said, let's just talk.
Yeah, that's
Let's just
great. I
hang out and
mean,
be.
you can't tell that about with your that you do that usually. So I mean, I'm glad to hear that you do though. That's
But
that.
I hide the preparation well, right? I mean,
Yeah, you do a great job. It's great to be with you, cousin Warren.
yeah,
My
yeah.
dad says we're all descendants of Adam and Eve Smith, so I think that's
Exactly
true.
right. Though you're from West Virginia. What's the old joke about West Virginia? 4 million people, seven last names, right? So
That's deeply hurtful. That is, yeah, that's offensive. Wow, my goodness, I'm a victim.
yeah.
I think I'm a hate crime victim right now. This is what it feels like.
That's right. Trigger warning, right? You've been yeah. Okay. Well, seriously, if we can be seriously, what let's there's things that we need to talk about that are current with you. And so why don't we go ahead and do that? I mean, one is that you've got a Kickstarter campaign going right now, trying to raise a couple hundred grand. I had dinner with you and your son Josiah in West Virginia. What's it been? It's been a week and a half, 2 weeks ago now when I was on my road trip.
It's seared into my memory, so it just feels very fresh right now. The wound, I mean, the time that we had together was very.
Yeah.
It's point. Yeah, I think it was a week ago. Yeah, it was great.
See, you've offended me so much. I'm not even going to thank you for picking up the tab for that dinner, which you did. Yeah.
I was just trying to get
But
you out of there. I was just like, let's go. Let's
let's
move.
go. Let's get yeah. But when we talked at like only a week ago or 10 days ago, face to face, we were talking about the Kickstarter campaign, and I think you were feeling. I thought you were doing fantastic. You'd raised 140 grand then, and now you're like very near your $200,000 goal. I checked just a little bit ago, and I think you're like at 185, close to $190,000 right now. So, I mean, who knows what could happen, but between now and the end of the month. But wow, congratulations on that, and tell everybody why you're starting this Kickstarter campaign because I got to tell you, I don't know that I've ever seen anything quite like this. You're doing this for a video game, right?
Yeah, it's a little unusual. It's a book. So we've done all these books, these Green Ember books, and they're for middle grade kids. They're adventure, action, kind of old school virtue. I call them new stories with an old soul. If you're listening on radio, then Warren's holding up a pile of books here. He's
That's right.
uh,
If you're for that, that's for my YouTube viewers, right? I've got a big stack of Green Ember and other books, and we're going to talk a little bit about them in a minute. But so you've got these books, and
Yeah, so we've been doing books for years, and we for a long time there's been kind of a call, and we've had a lot of conversations with folks about moving the Green Ember off of the page and trying to figure out how to do that. Is it a movie? Is it TV shows? We've had a lot of conversations. We're long story short on that front, we're kind of waiting for the right partners, the right timing, and we've had yeah, there's been progress on that, but we're also kind of not in a big hurry on that front. We really have, I feel, I don't know, man, because it's so personal, the way that these stories, evolved as stories that were started in my home with my own kids. And then I've had this real rare privilege of having this pretty deep connection with the audience, lots and lots of letters. And done some book tours and just met so many of them. I just met a bunch of them in Michigan last week. So I know these kids. I love them, and I feel a real high responsibility, high degree of responsibility to do it, to be a good steward of the property, and to not just sort of, I don't know, cash in or just do something that's not responsible for them. Yeah, we've been kind of thinking about that, and so there was this idea of a video game, and I always wanted to do. I thought, well, if we're going to do that, I don't necessarily just want to do an adaptation of a book that's already out there. I thought, well, why don't we do something new, something exciting? So we're the one of the most beloved characters in the whole series is named Helmer, and he's sort of the old mentor character. And I thought, well, let's do an origin story. People have been asking for that for a long time. They love this. They love this grizzly old veteran character, and he became sort of a father figure in the story. Well, what was his origin story like? So I'm telling this new story. It's Helmer is the character, Helmer in the Dragon Tomb, and it's his first sort of origin story. And then there's a book, and there is also a game. We're calling it a video gamization of the novel. Usually, you'd have it the other way around, that you'd have a maybe or you'd have a film and you have a novelization or that kind of thing. But we have this novel and this video gamization where you can play. The Green Ember's always been kind of an immersive experience for kids. They play it themselves, make up games, do art, all kinds of neat stuff like that. Actually write songs, do all kinds of cool stuff, do plays. But now, hey, we're going to create this new way where you can tell, where you can play the story, this brand new story. So new book, new video game coming out together, and that's why we did it at Kickstarter. It's sort of an unusual offering. So the Kickstarter, I think, is sort of a good template for that sort of experimental, or it's maybe a good way to introduce it to an audience.
Well, Sam, one of the several things that you said, we could probably spend an hour talking about two or three or four ideas that you just introduced. But one of the things that I want to introduce is that, or get you to talk about a little bit more, is just the relationship that you have with your audience. You've sold 1.5 million books. These are now, I know because I got a stack of them right here. That
Well, you
doesn't
bought
necessarily.
half of them. I think that's half of
Well,
them.
I bought some of them. You gave me some of them, and I'm grateful for that. I want to be clear about that. The but 1.5 million books doesn't necessarily mean 1.5 million people, because I'm sure there are a lot of families like me that've got all your books or most of your books. But still, that's hundreds of thousands of people at a minimum that have a deep relationship with the Green Ember series and the other kind of spinoff. And you talk about your love for these kids and the sense of stewardship or responsibility you have for these kids. And I witnessed that even in what, because I've seen you at homeschool conferences. I've seen you at some of your road shows where you will pull out a guitar and do music. I mean, these kids show up with swords, to the events that you guys do. I have rarely seen, except at maybe Star Trek conventions, or in which I've never been to but just heard about, or maybe Harry Potter conventions, the kind of relationship that you guys have with your audience. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I'm just really aware that it's not massively huge. It's when you compare it to something like Harry Potter or Star Trek, it's really small, but it's not insignificant in numbers. But it's the depth is really the thing that is, I don't know, continually maybe surprising or encouraging, delightful. Uh, yeah, these kids are really invested. Like there's a real, I mean, I was at a conference in Michigan, and we had a tornado last week, and the the conference had to be canceled. They tried to get it going on generators, but anyway, they basically had to close the whole thing down. And I was one of the speakers, and I hadn't got to see that many people there yet, but I just sort of set up with a booth, or a table outside, and just a line just formed. And there's all these kids with their art, and somebody brought me cookies because I say that I like cookies in my bio and so people, they're trying to keep me fat and happy, and kids just lining up with and some kids bringing art and just wearing the t-shirts and I just got to hear stories from kids and from parents, and there's often a real deep connection. I think that's one reason why this is happening is I didn't plan that. These are just stories I told my kids, and I wrote it down as a novel, and it kind of took off from there. But I think that the reason why that's happened is because the kids love it on the adventure level. They're just like, this is fun. It's swashbuckling. It's swords. It's dramatic surprise. It's humor. They like it. They enjoy it on that level. And I think there's a depth though beneath that the parents really identify with. This sort of things that would resonate with Christians, particularly like deep themes and longings and kind of like the human soul. They're very human stories, even though they're rabbits. And there's
Absolutely.
there's a lot of complexity there. So I think, the common refrain that we hear is that the mom will be reading out loud the story, and at the end of the book, the mom will be crying, and the kids will be like jumping off the couch, like just we've condensed that down to moms weep for joy and kids leap for joy, and that's really I mean, it's happened, so we've heard that so often. So I think that it's not just the kids that feel identified with it. There's a real unity, which is a sweet thing because that's how it started. with it.
Well, no question about it, and I love the fact that y'all have made it, and I realize it's experimental, which is why you chose the Kickstarter route to help fund it. But I love the fact that you've chosen video games because because I'm kind of a media guy myself and read about media trends. I think people that are not involved in the gaming world don't understand how big the gaming world has become. That
Yeah.
it probably, I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but it probably exceeds movies in
By a
terms of the
huge measure. It's way,
yeah.
it dwarfs movies. Absolutely
And
dwarfs movies.
so and there are very few uh, I hate to say it this way, but there are very few Christian options. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of the video games are about murder and mayhem on the one hand. They're war games. Maybe they're in some cases they're are at a minimum R-rated in terms of the language and the sexuality that's involved. And to have an option for kids is pretty brilliant. Tell me how you came to that conclusion that there was a need there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's even more than just like sort of bad content as in violence or inappropriate like sexuality for kids. There is that for sure in spades. It's also just I think almost maybe more sinister because that you can sort of identify in a way, but the almost more sinister is this sort of addictive quality to the games are so much like slot machines now. They're designed to sort of drain you of time and your attention and your money. I mean, that's kind of they're very predatory games, and that's what and those games are advertising because they're spending so much. I mean, we can probably all if you're on your phone, you're doing something, you're probably like it's free, but it's not really free. It's very predatory, and I think that's sort of something we see us I don't know, an opportunity, a pretty stark opportunity to do something that is hospitable to kids, that's generous to kids. So I mean, it was completely off the table to do anything predatory, to do anything that's harmful to kids. You know, we've got this really very honestly sacred before God stewardship that's like I take very seriously. I wouldn't do anything to hurt these kids. So yeah, the game is our game. We immediately because we met with people, we met with like marketers and that kind of thing, and they're like, so you got to do it for free, and then do add-ons. You know, we do in-game purchases, and there was like there's a formula, and we were just like we can't do that. So it's the game feels very old-fashioned. It looks incredible. It looks like it's got great graphics. Brazen Animation they're the ones that did the game, and they are so fantastic, wonderful. Actually, Christian guys too. Just the owner there, Brian Ingram, is just a brilliant guy. But yeah, we had it was from the off. It was like, well, what if we did something different? And that got me excited in a way, actually, sort of entrepreneurial. I kind of thought, like now I'm like in the throes of it. I'm a little bit like tired and like, oh, is this going to work? But I kind
Right.
of got excited about the idea of like maybe people will get behind this because it's so fresh, it's so different, it's so hospitable. Like we're going to need people to sort of get to understand this sort of the how the contrast between this and what's normally offered for kids. And I think I was like, I kind of believe I have this confidence in the audience that they'll be like, yeah, we see what you're doing and we're for you, and that's happened to some degree, but it's been maybe a slower start than I had hoped for. But we're sort of it's very much on mission for us.
Yeah. Well, it sure does seem on mission, and even your ads on Facebook, which I've been encountering, have been really encouraging and thoughtful and really well done. In fact, offline, Sam, I want to get with you and ask you who's doing that for you because I'm thinking that Ministry Watch might could use some of that kind of marketing magic as well because I think they're just really well done. Hey, Sam, we could talk for a long time about this particular aspect of the work that you're doing, but unfortunately, I want to pivot. Let me say it a different way. I don't want to keep you all day. I don't want to keep I don't want to tax the patience of our listeners.
Unfortunately,
So
I'm tired of talking about this with you, Sam, and I'd like to move on.
well, I want to pivot in our conversation because I got a couple of other things that I really do want to talk about with you. And one is the fact that I mean, you're wearing your West Virginia shirt, representing, flying the freak flag, whatever, however you want to call it. But as somebody who is a writer myself, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've often thought about moving to Nashville, moving to New York. My kids, who are now adults and looking at careers in writing, filmmaking, and other places, they have gravitated to New York. Three of my four kids have lived in New York for a season of time. One of them is living in Los Angeles right now, and because that's where the art centers are, that's where the culture centers are. That if you are a serious person and want to pursue a career in the arts, the myth goes, you got to
Mm-hmm.
move to New York or LA or maybe more recently Nashville.
Yeah.
If it's technology, you might think about Austin or
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. But you have stayed in West Virginia, and you have carved out a career as an artist, as a writer. You sold 1.5 million books from basically from not even Beckley, West Virginia, but shall we say a suburb of Beckley,
Yeah.
West Virginia, if you could call it that.
Yeah.
The Wendell in me loves that.
Mm.
But talk about that a little bit. Just this your commitment to place and your commitment to being there in West Virginia, because I know, so, just to add to that a little bit, you and I have had a lot of personal conversations where we can probably not talk for more than 10 or 15 minutes before you're asking me, when are you moving to West Virginia? Right.
Yeah, I'm recruiting at all times. Yeah, that's the sad thing is that West Virginia has. I love West Virginia so much. I mean, it's like my family. I feel like I can criticize, well, but when other people criticize it, like you, I get so mad. But I know yours from a place of affection. But we have some troubles, that's for sure. And we have so much natural beauty, and I mean, our coal mines, our coal built, was the steel that built cities like Pittsburgh and New York, and helped win the war. And it's just there's so much incredible natural resources in West Virginia, timber and water, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's almost heaven. That's true. But we're struggling economically. We struggle mental health wise, physical health wise, spiritually. There almost. I mean, I'm 48. Almost everybody that I know my age who had talent or opportunity left. I mean, that's sort of the story is everybody leaves, and most people will go to Charlotte or to somewhere South Carolina, the down south a little bit. That's the most normal route. On a lot of weekends or holiday weekends, you just see so many South Carolina, North Carolina, sometimes Tennessee. License plate just coming through. People coming back to visit home, and so it's been this, and that's a kind of a compounding challenge. You lose the most talented people, and that means you have less quality leadership. You have less quality in so many areas, every area of leadership, spiritual, health, you know, political, everything. So it's just a challenge, and that's just I think a pretty honest assessment from a loving um, son of West Virginia, and but there's something about this place that does call people back. And I've been a missionary kid. We lived in South Africa when I was a teenager, so I have lived elsewhere for a short period of time, and I've seen a little bit of the world. And Josiah and I, my brother, we just when we were first quitting our jobs, we really seriously considered, oh, should we move to Colorado Springs? Should we move to Nashville? Should we move to Charlotte? Should we? And those were real considerations. And I think it was just a real sense of calling. I think that's the only thing we could say, because it practically was probably not smart. You think about the opportunities for kids. That's another big one for us. Is you think about something as simple as art lessons or music lessons, or those kinds of networking, the friendships, those sorts of things that would be available in other places. Are different than they are here. And I say that with love, because we're here. We're part of we're imperfect. We're not, I'm not saying that as a person who's standing above. That's us. We have challenges. That's in my family. That's our people. But Josiah and I just felt a really clear sense of calling that we wanted to stay and build. We wanted to be here. We wanted to be a part of a solution instead of sort of another number of like, well, there's another guys that left, and what could they have done here? So we want to be a part of staying and building. We love this place. So I'm very delighted that it does feel a little bit like those the parts of Paul where he talks about sort of the foolish shaming the wise, and I know that's not talking about this, but I like the underdog story. I like the idea of, and I think it's honestly, it's a little bit like God, I think, deserves so much glory and so much credit for what is happening in our community. That we've got a wonderful church that we're a part of that's just out of absolutely nowhere. I cannot believe what's happening in this church. And that's just been a gift from God that we've been praying for a long time, but we can't take any credit. We can't be like, well, we were so clever. We figured this out. We cracked the code. And it wasn't that. It was just that God's been so merciful to us. And I think that's happened with with our vocation as my storytelling too, is I don't think I wasn't really smart and thought, well, market in this incredible way. And we told it was a very honest, organic story that spread. And we didn't do a whole lot to do that initially. It wasn't the cleverness, it wasn't the brilliance, and I didn't think, oh, I'll tell this kind of story and that'll really go. It wasn't like that at all. So I just feel like God's hand, and I love this. I don't know if you've read Alan Patton's "Cry the Beloved Country" about South Africa. Just
Yep.
one of the best.
Many years ago, I got to confess, it was a long, long time ago in college. So,
Just a wonderful, one of my favorite books. Not
yeah.
just because it's about South Africa, but there's a character in there, Mzamango, who says, "I'm a weak and sinful man, but God has put his hands on me. That is all." And that is how I feel. I just feel like, what do we have? What are me? Who am I? And who was my house? I'm very proud of my family, but we're pretty modest people, and, but like God has put his hand on us. And I'm grateful for that. And I love that's happening here. And it feels like, well, as a storyteller, I'm just like, I like that kind of a story. I like the story of this what's happening here. And yeah, we want to stay and build something.
Well, and I just love that. Just the idea of that, Sam, resonates with me so deeply. And a lot, and I'm at a stage in life where not because I've of any great achievement, but just purely for age and outlasting, a lot of others. Where I'll be asked to speak at conferences, or I'll have young people say, how do you make a career as a writer or a filmmaker, or whatever it might be. And I always tell them, you don't have to go to New York. You don't have to go to LA. I mean, I'm always arrested, even though I've read this passage many, many times. Paul in Mars Hill on the
Mm,
Areopagus, he said that God has prescribed
mm,
our dwelling places. He has um, uh, marked the boundaries
yeah.
of our living spaces, so to speak.
Mm,
Wherever you are, there is a certain element of God's sovereignty at
mm,
work in placing me in Charlotte and you
mm,
in West Virginia, that I think we don't fully appreciate, that we can be obedient and faithful wherever we are. We don't
yeah.
have to move to Nashville or Austin or New York or whatever it is.
Mm,
And it's one of the things that I really love about your story is that you've just rather than in fact, that you and I had a friendly discussion about who originated this saying. Um, uh, when I criticize, in order to
oh.
to
Uh,
criticize, I create something beautiful.
yeah, I criticize by creation, not by finding fault or something.
Yeah.
It's
And
Cicero.
I said that Michelangelo said that. I criticized by creating something beautiful. You said that I believe it was Cicero who said that. Is that correct?
That's right, I believe.
But whoever said it, the idea is just such a beautiful idea. And I really admire what you're doing there in West Virginia. And I think and that's one of the reasons, honestly, Sam, that I wanted to have you on the program, because I believe that to a certain extent, that's the challenge that we all face wherever we are,
Mm,
right? We've got to, I think, at some level, get over a longing to be someplace else and
mm,
ask the question, God, what can I do here? How can
mm,
I be obedient here and now in this place, in this time that you have placed me?
mm.
And so I just want to say thank you for modeling that.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that so much, and I totally agree with you. I think there's the idea that I'm not sure that the motivation for everyone to say. I hear it in like tech, sort of the tech bro kind of world, or entrepreneurial or hustle culture kind of a thing. Like, what are you doing in your dinky town? Like, get to Silicon Valley, and I understand that but it feels very mercenary and very much like, there's an arrogance to it and a utilitarian sort of sense to it, that it feels a little bit ugly to me. And, and, and I think that we're ignoring some of the downsides too. The sort of, I think that for a long time, I think we've gravitated to people who are like, oh, even the ministry, like, oh, go to a big city, and we say, oh, Paul did that. Paul went to cities, and I think we kind of overlooked the faithfulness of rural communities and rural pastors, and that kind of a work. And there's something about staying with a network of family and building something that is possible, that is not possible when we continue just to become like these over isolated individuals, like over, realized individualism, where we go to a big city and meet a bunch of other people who are disconnected. I think there's something powerful about, like, for young men to, like, I'm going to see my mom. Like, I think you treat women differently, maybe, when you say like, oh, on Sunday or this next day, I'm going to see my mom, I'm going to see my sisters. Like, I think you think it's maybe you think maybe it's possible to treat women in a way that's less like using them, or thinking I think it's not that it's always that case, but I just think there's something powerful about community. There's a
Yeah.
restraining power, I think, a good restraining power of community. And maybe I think that's sometimes what people are kicking against. I want to be completely free, and I want to be this isolated individual who's going to realize all my potential, instead of sort of seeing myself as like, I'm a part of this family, I'm a part of this body, and I have different gifts, and oh, they're different than me. Well, maybe that means I have something to offer them, and they have something to offer me. And this Pauline vision of the body of Christ is so powerful to me, even just as a artist. I think, like, yeah, the church needs me, and I need the church. Like, I don't need I don't need a community that's divorced from like regular people and from the church. Like, that's the community that I need, and I think
Yeah.
that community needs my voice too. And so I want to stay up and I want to stay. I want to be faithful where I am.
Yeah. Well, Sam, we need to land this airplane, but let me maybe pivot once again in our conversation and ask you to look ahead. Obviously, you've got this Kickstarter campaign. You're gonna, be working on this video game project. When you and I had dinner together last week or the week before, whenever it was, I met your son Josiah. I don't remember whether I had ever met him before, but I know. I mean, if I had met him before, it was very briefly, and we got to spend some nice time together, and I'm really grateful for that. And he is also a co-author with you on at least one of your latest books. Is he? I'm looking at the Jack Zulu and the girl with golden wings. Has he written more, or is that the only one that you guys have done together yet?
The one that's right beside it, the other Jack Zulu book, is Jack Zulu and the Waylanders
Oh
Cave.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, there it is. I
those
see it
two.
right there, right in front of me. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's we got two out of the three of the trilogy done together.
So is that kind of the I mean I think about the Marvel universe or the DC universe. Now we kind of have the Green Ember universe, or the Jack Zulu universe. Are there more series? Do you guys have a plan for the future in terms of more books, or are you gonna try to drill down and do more with what you've got here?
Well, we definitely. It's funny, we created the Green Ember world, and that sort of has grown, and I think we learned so much doing those books. There's 11 of those so far. This Helmer book will be the 12th. The Jack Zulu one was a world that Josiah created, and I sort of like, he was asking me about, he wanted to make it into a film or a TV show, and that's kind of how he was writing it. And I thought, well, it's fine, but if it's a novel first, then and I can help you write that, or you can just do it, and I'll help you however you want. That can probably actually accelerate the possibility of it being a TV or film, just because you sort of kind of establish it, and sort of we know how to do that. So anyway, he was like, let's write that together. So we partnered up on it. That's one thing, but I feel like we learned so much from mistakes and just doing the Green Ember stuff, that we sort of positioned that in a way that was, I think, really, I don't know, I think that they're better than the Green Ember books. The Jack Zulu books are, I really really love them, but they're the product of a lot more knowledge about how to do this kind of a thing, and I'm excited about them. But they haven't quite caught on the same way that the Green Ember books have. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm like there's always ideas. I want to do more series. So we've done my Mooses with Bazookas, which is sort of this goofy, wild sort of stuff. I love that story. I'd love to write more of those. And yeah, I'm got two completely distinct novel series that are already written. Actually, the first book in each of those is written that are ready to go, and it's just kind of figuring out when to share those. But yeah, that's my heart is to I kind of like to think about 200 years and what will I wish I had done, and I really think that the best place for me, sort of in the on the team, is creating sharing stories that can be read, maybe hopefully long after I'm gone, if they're useful and a gift. That's the gift I want to leave behind.
Well, Sam, I think that's a just a worthy and noble goal, and I predict success in that goal because I know I have found these books to be nourishing. I found my friendship with you to be nourishing. So, Godspeed on this journey, and thanks for being on the program today. And before we close, just anything I'm not smart enough to ask, or any idea that we did talk about that you want to reiterate before we go.
No, I appreciate and you kind of always you see I appreciate what that you see sort of what's happening with us in West Virginia, and that you care about that, and that means a lot to us because it's special to us, and it's an important part of our story. So I thank you for seeing that, and I thank you for your friendship, and thanks for having me on your show. This was really fun. Let's do it again in 30 years.
Well, I hope sooner than that. But yeah, absolutely. Let's do it again. Thanks, Sam. Peace.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you, brother.